So, but we wanted to really just take the time out, not only for Women's Day. I was kind of trying to represent my little shirt here as I kind of go off screen a little bit. But just to try to celebrate Women's Day. You know, yesterday was International Women's Day, and we're all just trying to progress and represent ourselves. But we really want to talk about those athletes, how to raise or just raising a female athlete. This is such a specialness about us because there's so many different things that does kind of play into it. Like, look at our emotional, look at our physical being. Like, yes, we go out and we compete. I know when I played originally, I used to play against the guys all the time, and I always had to represent myself each and every time because they never want to have the girl on their squad. I was always the last picked. But guess what? When I played, they're like, oh, we're going to remember you next time. Of course you are, because that's what I do. So I really just wanted to bring in like a great panel of people. And there's one other person that's coming, and hopefully will be coming a little bit later. But if not, we'll just keep it moving. But I really wanted to get a great panel of people just to answer some of those questions that some of you guys have been posting on Facebook, or even just some of the things that you were very curious about. What is it and why is it so special about raising a female athlete? So who I have for today, I have Miss Lashawn Gee. She's a coach, a speaker of like Elle Gee, and it took me a while for me to really understand the Elle Gee because her first name begins with an L. Right? It was so genius. I'm like, oh, okay. She is also an author of Jump That Counts. So make sure you check out that book. And she was an All-American and also a Hall of Famer for track. Featured in many podcasts, like as being the model. And her philosophy is basically teaching female athletes to increase their focus and activate their discipline muscles so they can navigate academics, athletics, and life after sports. And the one thing, I was basically stalking her for a moment. I love this quote right here. The mindset you are looking for starts from inside out. So I would like to introduce to you Miss Lashawn Gee. And also with us, we have Miss Sheila Weaver. And she is the CEO of Sign Me to Play. So the mission to help parents fulfill their child's dream to play sports in college using their patent 3-step process that gets college coaches their attention, and also to help find that college or university that best suits your child academically as well as athletically. So ladies, thank you so much for joining myself. And for those that don't know me, I'm Audrey Codner-Gibson. I'm also the head tutor and owner of ACG Math Tutoring, but I'm also expanding to Academic for Athletes. I really want to help and support parents as well as athletes as they go through their whole process of becoming an athlete. And we all know it is a process. And there's going to be some heights, there's going to be some lows, and I want to be that person to try to help you even things out. So ladies, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Just to start off, anyone can stop in. I'm not all like, oh, you have to answer, you have to answer. But I really want to hit on that first question. So a lot of people said, how can athletes better advocate for themselves? Like, it seems like we don't really advocate for ourselves that much. And it's like, how can we, and as well, if you want to add into your businesses and what exactly you do, how can especially female athletes advocate for themselves? Anyone can jump in.
Well, I guess I'll start and just really come from the mindset standpoint. You know, mental health is a very, very blatant thing nowadays, right, within sports. I believe we talked about it a little bit. It was very much so taboo though in the past, and especially among female athletes. You know, there's stigmas attached to female athletes. There's, positive and negative. There are so many things that mentally we deal with and we don't talk about. And really being better advocates for themselves at the collegiate level is really about opening your mouth and asking. You have to start with one, figuring out what you really want. What is the experience you want to have as a student athlete at the institution you're going to be at for the next 4 years? When you can answer those questions, that is when you can start to really empower yourself to speak up. Even if you're the only one speaking up for yourself, it's so important to make it known what you want, how you want it, how you learn, because different coaches have different coaching styles. Different athletes learn differently. And when it comes to collegiate sports, yes, it is a business, and this is basically business 101. And this is a great way that female athletes can step in, step up, and speak up for themselves if there is no one else helping them out.
Exactly. And especially as you're growing up, you're so used to having your parents or maybe even some of your coaches doing the speaking for you. And when you're going through this process, especially when you're getting older, your sophomores, juniors, and even those seniors in high school, a lot of times, like, those coaches are not going to be talking to your parents. They want to talk to you. And it's almost like you have to form almost like your Sasha Fierce type of thing, like your persona, in order for you to voice and speak on what you want and actually knowing what you want. So, I mean, that is huge. Like, a lot of kids don't see that you're making that huge transition, because I love when you said, this is a business. Right. It's no longer, I mean, it's going to be fun, but at the same time, now you are part of a product. Like, once you sign, it's almost like you just signed, like, parents, you just basically signed your child away. Like, if you want to put it so bluntly, this is how we're going to be blunt without me cursing. You're signing your child away. And right. Coaches are going after your kids, and they're going after their abilities. So maybe that's one thing that needs to be taught, and not so much in the classroom like teachers, but need to be taught at home, how to speak and understand what you're saying and what you're hearing.
And that's one thing that I speak about when I do speak to secondary schools, when I go to high schools and I talk to student athletes. When I was coaching track and field and I had my middle school, high school teams, I taught them, you have to tell me what you need. You have to tell me if something is going on, whether it's internally, whether it's at home, whether it's at school. I need to know, and I need you to have the courage to speak up. And so it was nothing for me to ask, like, how are you doing? Not just, oh, I'm good. But that question is so important to ask. Really, how are you doing? How are you doing in practice? How are you doing at home? Is there any way that I can support you? And so going into schools and talking to teams, especially with athletes who are serious about that next level, they need to have that conversation with someone, if they're not having it at home, about being able to speak up for yourself when mom and dad are not able to be at school with you, and not able to wake you up in the morning, not able to go to your team meetings and know what's going on.
Right. And then Ms. Sheila, like, what are some of the things that you're thinking of?
Well, as a parent of two student athletes, one played Division I, one played Division II. And as their coach and as a youth sports organizer, I ran the club also. I've just found that it's very important early on for you to establish what I call in one of my courses, the player-parent partnership. And because each person, I mean, the player has a role, the parent has a role. And of course, there's some overlap. But as they're going through this process early on, it's really important to establish what your responsibilities are. And those are guidelines that you set early on, like when they're in middle school even. then they have a good foundation to build upon. Because when you get into high school and you're in 9th, 10th grade, and when real serious recruiting starts, it's a little late because sometimes parents are only going through this for the first time. And so there's a lot of mistakes that are often made because of, I say, lack of preparation, to no one's fault, actually, because if you're not involved in sports, you really don't know what to expect. And so what we're trying to do early on is to establish what the expectations are and how do you handle different situations. And again, why do you want to, and as the other young lady said, why do you want to play? What's important to you? It's just not the parent, the parent may be like, I want to get her in this sport. And they may not even tell you which sport you're going to get into. They just like put you in, we're going to go to track,
Right.
Get out there, start running, just stuff like that happens all the time. So we have to really want to listen as a parent, and not only from your kids, but also from others. But then after you do listen, you have to have that ability to kind of take some things with a grain of salt and do a little research on your own and do some fact finding, because that's kind of, that's what it's all about. You can't always rely on one person.
Exactly. And everyone always rely on the coaches. And that's the hard part, because the coaches are worrying about winning. They're getting their strategies together, they're getting their situation together, and that doesn't matter at what level. They're all trying to win, So when it comes down to it, when it came to the recruiting process, like you brought on, a lot of kids got to realize where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Some of them like to do all 3 sports. They're like fall, winter, and spring. And sometimes they have to make a decision, because some places you won't be able to be like a dual sport person. And you have to make that decision of where you want to go. But you made a great point that you have to make your research. You have to do your research. You can't rely on other people. Like, you can go to these big businesses that's all they do is recruiting. And they're going to treat you like a number. Or unless you're kind enough to get a good coach there that can support you. But you're going to have to do a lot of the research to come with the questions, so you have someone to help you answer them. So it's not like, all right, I'm here, help me. And you're like, what do you want to do? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, okay. And what year are you? A senior? Okay. Maybe I don't know how can I help you? Like, and it's really hard. It's a struggle. So when it comes to not only dealing with the what, the wins, and the hows, it's also that emotional, like, are you emotionally ready to do this? Because like you said, which is great, a lot of the parents don't know. My parents didn't know when I was going through it. I didn't start playing basketball until my 9th grade year, which was horrible. But as my coach told me, you can't teach height. So how can these kids can be like emotionally ready? Like, how can we prepare them? What are some suggestions that we can have? Like, how do we deal with the emotional stress? Anyone want to chime in? Or that's a deep question, I know.
Yeah, that takes a lot of thought, and for every kid, as parents too. I think the kids, well, I have a granddaughter now who's a 9th grader. She's being looked at by the top schools in the country because, her mom was one of the best players too. But emotionally, I think sometimes they're kind of outside of themselves. Emotionally, they're more attached sometimes to their girlfriend or someone else who's on this team, which may not even be the right team for them. And they may not even know that. And so, as parents, you kind of have to keep that in mind, that kids, sometimes they'll be playing for someone else, even not even themselves, not even the parent. They're playing because their girlfriend's on the team. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of have to be, I guess, thoughtful, but trying to explain that, everyone's got different skill levels, and we have to really assess what is it that you want to do with sports? What kind of career, if that's going to be your career, how is sports going to enable you to, fulfill those ambitions through sports or some other career, if you want to be a doctor. So then maybe you have to look at different programs that are going to allow you, opportunity to take the courses that you need, which may not be offered during the summer or during the time. And that it lengthens the amount of time you're at the college. There's so many variables that you have to know. So this whole idea of assessment, I think early on is what I like to do with families and with the students, to kind of get a feel for where they are, and then we try to take them where they dream to be. That's kind of my slogan for, because everyone's coming in at a different place. So we meet you where you are and take you where you dream to be. So
I agree. I think it's so important to assess a young woman's emotional capacity where she is. You know, again, she could be challenged with peer pressure. She could be challenged with boyfriends, girlfriends, you know, family, you know, issues. And she's just trying to get in where she fits in. She's just doing this because it keeps the peace, or she's doing it because maybe she really wants to do it. And really figuring that out from an early age is so important. I mean, I didn't do organized sports. I didn't participate in organized sports as a young kid. I started running track in the 8th grade. And I think for me, I mean, I played a lot. I was very active before I actually started sports. Now it's a business when you're 5, sports is a business when you're 5 years old. I go to some, a lot of these age group meets, and kids are plastered across the screen, with their time and, the flashing lights. So it's a little different than when, say, we were athletes. And social media, huge blueprint for these young people. And transitioning into an athlete is a commitment that young girl is going to either say yes to, or she's going to say no to. That middle ground is going to be hard. It's going to be a challenge for her, because as I'm not a parent, but as a coach, as someone, as a parent who wants to see their child succeed, really having them succeed in what they want to do is important, and listening to them, because if they actually want to compete, say, for this season, because they just want to try it out, leaving that door open for them, let them commit to the season, but leaving that door open instead of trying to force something upon a child, it can be detrimental if you're not careful, because then they're going to look, that's going to follow them into their adulthood, and it's going to show up in other areas of their life. So having them leave that door open for what's next. Again, I speak on, transitioning into life after sports. Transitioning into life after sports is not just for student athletes who are graduating and going into adulthood. Life after sports can mean, hey, I'm about to leave high school. I really don't want to do this in college. And that's that young girl's right, instead of being pushed into, no, you're going to do it. If she really doesn't want to, and she really wants to explore what's next, that door needs to be opened, needs to stay open for her, so she can feel the freedom and the authenticity of herself when it comes to who she is and what she wants to do. Now, I was laser focused as an athlete. I ate, slept, breathed track and field from 8th grade to 12th grade. I knew in middle school where I wanted to go to school, and I worked. I knew what I wanted. And my parents also allowed me to flourish in that. And if at any time I changed my mind, I know that they would have been open to me changing my mind. Mm-hmm. We get to instill that same openness into parents now, about leaving the door open for these young women to be themselves authentically, even if that means I'm going to be this athlete for this amount of time. And then after that, I get to do something else. I get to see what else is out there, because now my mindset is open to, hey, there's more to my life than just, this court, that track, that field, and that's so important. It's so important because we live this much of our lives as actual competing athletes. We live this much of our lives as the people we're going to be.
Right. Because just talking to so many different people throughout Facebook groups and all that. And like one of the things that was very interesting to me is like ice hockey. And a lot of people say, oh yeah, my child was on the ice at the age of 2. And I'm like, dang, like, did you just give birth to the child? But like, all right, boom, go skate. But then you think about it, and like, as us as like former athletes, when you get your kids, you're like, oh, I just want them to love the sport that I loved. But then when you mention that one thing, giving them choice, and we all know kids are not very good at making the decision, because one minute they want ice cream and next minute they want pizza, and you're like, make a choice. But for the most part, by being open and being supportive, because you never know what sport they're going to gravitate to or what activity they're going to gravitate to, because they want to try different things. And one thing that you mentioned, go for a whole season. Don't let them quit mid-year, or don't let them quit after the first week. You're going to dedicate yourself for a full season. See if you like it. If not, let's see what else is out there. Because there was some parents that are like, look, basketball at that time, depending on where they were, was probably cheaper for them to maintain. You just get a ball, get us an outdoor court, go. But now it's like, as you're saying, both of you guys are saying, it's a business. Right. And a friend of mine, his son went to one of those elite basketball tournaments that was going on this weekend. I think his son is like 6 years old, which I'm like, elite basketball. Yeah, welcome to my world. And he was like, they were out there, they were playing. And he was like, I was just talking to some of the parents, because he wasn't an athlete. So for the most part, like, he's really into music and so forth. And then when he was talking to other parents, they're like, oh, so, what's it like being on travel teams and all that? They're like, oh yeah, I dropped like 30 grand last year for this. And oh yeah, I dropped like 15 grand for this. And he was like, whoa. And I told him, like, yeah, this is a business.
And like, that alone brings emotional strain. It may not be visible, but that is emotional strain and stress on that child.
Yes.
That's a lot of stress on that child, and helping them navigate through that by giving them choice. It's your choice to spend 15 grand, 30 grand to see this student athlete's season through. It's that student athlete's choice to decide, I really, really like this and I want to keep going, or this doesn't make me feel good. Maybe they don't say this stresses me out, but this doesn't make me feel good. Looking for those, just context clues, just context clues as it pertains to how they are feeling while they're participating in that sport. And if a parent is putting pressure on that child, I spent this amount of money, you're going to stay in this sport, I've spent this amount of money, versus having the conversation and saying, hey, if you really want to do this, this is the commitment. This is also, I don't talk often about this, but having children understand where money goes in the family. We grew up, we all talk about money, that's not how we grew up. You just did what your parents paid for, and that was it. You didn't ask questions about what things cost. Now kids know what athletes in different sports make, so money is a conversation all the time. But having that student athlete know, if you're going to participate in this is the investment we're making. Are you willing to commit for this entire season? You play from this time to this time. Really having those conversations with your students, with your athletes, even if you don't know yourself the ins and outs of it, if you're new to it, just like they are, sitting down and learning together, having that conversation is very, very important. And I think it will reduce the amount of emotional stress and strain as that child progresses into actually being an athlete.
Mhm. So Miss Sheila, for the
Uh-huh.
whole sign me to play, what are some of the
Mhm.
things that you've seen in your business? What are some of the things that, if we can tell parents right here, right now, like, I know we're talking about female athletes, but I'm
Mhm.
almost like getting to the point that everything that we're saying about female athletes, we're going to get to a little more details in a few, that we should be saying to almost every athlete, every parent. What is
Right.
something that you've seen?
Well, I think one of the other key things is as you're evaluating colleges and coaches are evaluating players, um, you want to make sure that your student athlete is relevant to the program. Sometimes you just see yourself as wanting to play at this college, at this position, and you may be the best, say, we'll say a linebacker or someone who's like, maybe he's one of the best at his position that particular year, but if you are in tune with what kind of research you need to do, and you find there's 3 or 4 linebackers who are already on the squad, and so maybe that year you're just not relevant to that school or to that coach because it's just what happened. Maybe another year you might be relevant. So it's kind of like, as student athletes and parents, you really need to keep your options open and not be so set on a particular college if it's not going to meet your needs. And so that's why I like to be academically qualified. And one of the things that the program that I have does is that there's a software which allows you to plug in the usual things, what you would like to pursue in school, your grade point, areas of the country, and it gives you a list of colleges that, one, you're academically qualified to get into based on last year's admissions requirements at the colleges.
Mhm.
So this is a good start because now you have a list of schools or colleges that you should or are likely to get in because you're already meeting their academic guidelines. So then with that list, you begin to market yourself as a student athlete to the coach. And so you're trying to make an impression and what I call our awareness triggers so that there are, very few athletes who get the top scholarships. So you're in competition with so many other student athletes. So how can you set yourself apart from those who are at your same position? And by creating these awareness triggers, which I advocate is sending video, email, and some other things that we incorporate into our program, you now have an actual image. The coach, because I was a Division II coach myself, and so I would get all kinds of emails from different large recruiting groups. Like you said, that's a business. I remember when there weren't these ecosystems of all the colleges. I mean, the coach, you got the when you're going to a tournament, you got this group that's signing everybody up. Then you got this other group coming in who's going to talk to them about athletic scholarships. But they're also a network, so this whole ecosystem thing. So you kind of have to break down what is it as an athlete that you're looking for, and then talk to the coach, not necessarily always in an email, but again, video, email, and talk about other aspects of the college. So they get to see your face more than just coming to a court or wherever you are standing in the bleachers and looking at you from a distance. So now they can see you up close and personal. So that's, I think, how you really want it to be. You want to be able to see them, see their reactions to what you're saying. They want to see you. And then you kind of form a little bit of more of a permanent concept of what it's going to be like to be perhaps with that coach, even if it may not end up being that way. But now they have a better feel for you as a person. You can talk about some maybe community service that you do outside, go on the site, look at different aspects, things that maybe they're building a new art center. And, I love art. I want, so you have to kind of be a salesperson. You're marketing yourself. So that's that whole thing with branding and marketing, because you have to tell your story. And how does your story match up with the college and the coach? And is it going to be a good fit? So we're looking for the good fit from your standpoint,
Right.
not just the coach's standpoint.
Right. You're not going there I mean, it's always good to like, you enjoy the coach, but you have to make sure that it's a great fit for you academically,
Right.
because you're going to be there.
Athletically.
You know, like athletically, I'm going to be truthful. Coaches leave. Like when I went
Right.
to St. Joe's University, after the first year, my coach left. I'm like, I came here and you just gonna leave me?
I came
And
for you.
right. And then my second choice, she took the position, and yeah, it was a very interesting 3 years. But it has to make sure it's something that you want to do. Ask questions. Like, I know women of color where can I get my hair done at? Because that's important to me. Like, where can I get like a certain food? Like, you know, I can't always go to the cafeteria, because if you're in like one of those sports, like those high paying, like football, basketball, now even volleyball, like your schedule is so jam packed. Sometimes you can't even get to the cafeteria because the cafeteria is closed, or you can only get to the cafeteria at the end of the year. So it's like, what is it really like? And even if you go for your unofficial visits, I always tell people, talk to a professor of a major that you like, that you're just like, I really want to go to that. Talk to either the department chair or to a professor. And I know this was like before COVID, but maybe this might be a possibility. See if you can sit in. Get that experience, sit in that classroom, be in the back. And when you're there, you're not on your phone. Like, I want you to take notes. And like at the end, see if you can talk to that professor, because that helps them to remember you as well. Because teachers talk. The professors and the coaches, they all talk. You know, they may not be in the line all the time, but they always talk. So with all of that, it's almost like you worry so much about the athletic, and, you know, we want the academic, but this one thing I want to kind of bring up right now is like the emotional. And this is huge. How are we going to be emotional? Because we had this one young lady that recently passed away from Stanford University. And I mean, the timing of all of this is just crazy. You know, we had the Summer Olympics when, you know, Simone and oh goodness, I keep forgetting this.
Naomi.
Thank you.
Naomi Osaka.
Naomi. Like, I know you. And just the fact that they stood up and said, I'm not okay. Thinking about me when I was an athlete, I couldn't do that. I was always told to suck it up. You know, there wasn't that mention of mental health. There wasn't that discussion. Yeah, we had a sports psychiatrist, but we never spoke to the sports psychiatrist because, you know, they'll probably be the biggest snitches of anything. So no one ever talked to them. So when you're in a room filled with people that supposedly love you, appreciate you, you still feel alone. And it's almost like, how can we kind of help with that emotional? Like, how can we reach out? Because I really think that this development happens before that young lady was even in college. It's like the stress, like we've all mentioned, all three of us mentioned the stress of going through this process. This is a business. So how can we help the student athlete, especially, and especially female student athletes? Because I'm not saying the males don't go through it, but it seems like the women go through it a lot more than the males, because we still have to uphold our girlish or our womanly duties. We still have to uphold a certain persona of what a woman is. But at the same time, when we go on our court, on the track, on the field, whatever, we got to be a beast. We got to be beast mode when we're out there. How is it, like, what are some things that maybe you guys encountered that can help with that emotional piece?
I think it's important to have camaraderie, create camaraderie, cultivate camaraderie among your team as the coach of your team, as the athlete, because if there are athletes that are going to be watching this, it's important to gel with your team. In high school and in college, I was grateful to be able to have a team where we coexisted well. We were a family. And a lot of people recognize track and field as an individual sport, but the fact is we train together every day. Boys, girls, men, women, high school, middle school, high school, college, we train together every day. and we got along. And we got along like siblings. So when we got along, we got along. And when we didn't, we didn't. But it is so important to create that camaraderie and cultivate it on your team so that those athletes feel those, especially when we're talking about female athletes, so that they know and they can see that it's a safe space. That there, if I can't go to this person, I know I can talk to this person. And we may share some of the same angst, worries, doubts, fears, questions. Again, this is why making it important to have an open space where people feel like they can ask questions is super important. I never asked questions, and it has followed me into my adulthood. You know, it's something that I am gaining revelation about now, and realizing like, wow, there were opportunities where I just didn't open my mouth. I didn't ask questions that I had questions about, and I just kept the athlete mindset about everything. And it's great because athletics teaches us so much: discipline, leadership, resilience, strength, owning your power. But when it came to things like, you know, I'm super nervous and I don't know why I'm throwing up at, you know, before every event that I have. That wasn't my experience, but that's just an example. Why is this thing going on? Or I competed, I didn't compete as well as I wanted to. Now my coach won't speak to me. What's up with that? There needs to be someone there that young woman can talk to, that girl can talk to, because she may not understand why coach is not speaking to her. And it's not because he doesn't like her, but it's because he or she is already trying to look to, okay, what is practice going to look like on Monday? You just never know. What do I need to do with this athlete in practice? Why she is performing this way? Sheila has no idea what's on that coach's mind, but being able to emote that to someone else makes a difference. It just really makes a difference. From the young female athlete all the way up to even the pro female athletes, or even former female athletes, when it comes to just asking questions and opening your mouth and creating that space where you feel like you have people that you can talk to that are not just the authority figures.
Yes. Ms. Sheila, what do you think about this?
I agree with what the young lady is saying. I think it's important, as you're looking at colleges too, to find out who are the support people on staff already, who's in the department, whose the job is to try to realize or see these situations before they occur, or help recognize some of the things that you might be experiencing, and then what are some of the ways that you can combat those feelings or bring them to someone's attention rather than just keep them inside of you. And so I think that's a very important aspect of looking at a college, because now colleges know. It's not like you're going to be with other colleges. They're going to have resource people. They're going to have others in the departments whose job it is to try to help the athletes get through these emotional times. And what are some of the strategies that they've used in the past or in talking with the other athletes? So I would say when you're having a visit, if you're able to have a visit, you definitely want to be having time with the other student athletes, not just that they're there to convince you to come to the school, but something, that's a role they have too. But they also, you want to have kind of like get more of an insider viewpoint about what it's like in the dorms, or what it's like when I'm traveling. What do we do when we're traveling? How do we room? What do we get to eat? Do we get choices? Do we get this? So I'd say come up with a list of things that from your might be important, like when you're sharing a room, when you're going to, do you get a room to yourself? Is it 3 people in a room? Is it 2 people in a room? Or how do you travel? So things like you just kind of assume, well, whatever it is, I'll be fine, but maybe you're not because you don't want to ride the bus everywhere, or, maybe they're flying, or maybe you're afraid of that, or, so you have to kind of think of different things that might impact your emotional well-being and food, how much do you get per day, how much do you get a day to eat?
Right.
Things like that as a nutritionist. And then now too, with name, image, license and all those kinds of things, so important to institutions and players, who is handling that for you or supporting you? Because that's very complicated now. Because I have a big interest in that. And so I've been working with some other people. I've talked to, there's a woman from Minnesota who's over a name, image, license network. There's a network out there. There's over 200 companies now that are in this business. And basically they're submitting information to her and she's kind of stamping it or just telling, because there's really no key to it at all. It's wide open. So you kind of have to be looking at it from your standpoint, how would I handle this? How do I monetize my image? So just look at all the resources, not just that, but that's an important one now that student athletes are considering when they make choices too.
Oh yeah, definitely, because it's a great opportunity for you to make additional funds, but you hit it on the head. Who's going to help you with that? Because you got to worry about your athletic ability. Now you got to worry about your academic. Now you got to worry about your social media. Like I know I tried to do social media. And there's so many times I want to take my little computer and throw it across the room because I just cannot. Facebook, Instagram. I'm like, now I understood when I was in the classroom. I used to be a classroom teacher and I understand why these kids were always on the phone. It is a process. And like now you have to worry about that. And that's why I wished before they did this, like, okay, we want them to make money. But you're taking a kid that never really held more than $1,000 in their hand or $100 in their hand. Now all of a sudden you got people throwing them millions and they're just like, oh, okay, I got money. So, I'm going to buy you this and buy you that. And they don't realize that eventually that money is going to run out. And it's great that you have that contract. But at the same time, it would be nice if the NCAA kind of opened up checking accounts for all the kids and say, all right, 20% is going to you, have fun, that's your thing, but 80% is going into this account because when you graduate, now you don't have to go back living to your mama's house. We love you when you leave to come to visit, but we don't want you to come running in and running out, and you don't want that when you graduate. But now you don't have anything. And then you're wondering, what is my next step? And it just seems like it's just a whole big ordeal, but you're right. There isn't any kind of organization with it. It's just, all right, we're going to give you money. Who's the best player? And you don't think that this is going to cause a rift? One player is, and then here's another thing. Women athletes aren't going to see all that much money.
Right.
We're not going to get that much. If we get 50K, that will be like, woo. But then here's that equality. We need to talk about that.
Right.
I remember going to school, they did the men's locker room, and I'm like, ooh, this is nice, I better not say it like that because I know Tiffany Haddish will be coming after me. Girl, I ain't got no money. So, but then you go to the women's locker room, you're like, okay, there's 3 showers, and one of them works, and there's 12 players, and we all have to get ready because we all have to run to our classes because practice went over late. And yeah. Or you go into the locker room or the weight room. You're like, okay, I'm a type of person, I like to lift a lot of weights. I love lifting. These little 10-pound weights ain't gonna do anything for me.
Right.
I need to do whatever I need. Okay, we got fitness trainer. Okay, I turned my ankle, because we're prone to turning ankles and knees, people. We got the childbearing hips, that's what's killing us. We don't have the anatomy, just like the men's team. So we're prone to those things. But when all of a sudden the men's team, when they get hurt, it's like, oh, okay, women's team, here's some ice. Go away. Tape yourself. And you're like, what? So when do we ever see, and I know the answer, but I just want to put it out there. When do you think we're ever going to see the equality? Like, we're seeing people, we're putting the NCAA, there's lawsuits coming out, there's lawsuits with the US women's soccer team. When are we going to ever see this happen? When is this going to happen? Do you think it's going to happen in our lifetime, or are we just going to have to hope and pray for the next couple generations?
You know, you hope that you get to see it in this lifetime. You really do. I believe these young people now, they know how to advocate for themselves. As much as they are on social media, on the internet, scrolling and trolling and searching for everything under the sun. One thing that I can say about them, as big as their personalities are, is that they can, and the ones who are bold enough will use their voice. And it kind of goes back to the first question about being advocates for themselves. These generations now who are in middle school, who are in high school, and even early college right now, they know how to use their voice. They know how to, like, as much as they know about this influencer over here and that athlete and that celebrity, they have taken in information that can also help them. And so when you hear of a boycott, oh, definitely, you know that they have been talking, they have been having conversation, and someone or someones have decided enough is enough. So the more that speaking out happens, we saw it. What was it, last basketball season with the NCAA championships? Yep. We saw it. That was a little glimpse of, all right, we're making it. We're moving into the right direction. Let that happen every year. Let that happen in every sport. Right. Because, we got to look at now, just the hierarchy of just the sports from different institutions and in different divisions. What this team gets versus what this team gets, what that sport gets versus what that sport gets. And then it goes into, all right, what do the men's teams get? What do the women's teams get? So there's a hierarchy in it all. And what is going to create that change is when people speak up, when women speak up and say, hey, this is not cool. Or, you know what? I'm not going to play for X amount. I will play for this amount. Mm-hmm. And again, that's about stepping into your authentic self. That's how getting to know yourself and getting to know your worth and what you are capable of creating and the power that you already possess. It's literally what I teach throughout my whole course. And when I go to speaking engagements, what I speak on. Seizing the day, Carpe Diem is the program that I teach. When you seize the day, that means you're taking advantage of all of you and your greatness. You're owning all of your authenticity, and you're able to now speak up for yourself because you know who you are. You know what you want. You know what you don't want. And you can say that boldly and you can say it courageously. And as one of my best friends, she speaks on courage. With owning your courage and being courageous, there's going to be some risk. So you have to understand the risk. And when you understand the risk, you can take continuous ownership, on your courage and take action on the things that matter to you.
Yes, definitely. Miss Sheila, I think you wanted to add.
No, I just think institutions have to listen more than they ever have before because of social media and the press and just complaints that damage their image and which damages their ability to get athletes to come to their institutions. So they're competing on another level. I mean, the athletes are competing on the field or on the gym, and then and now it's puts more pressure on the institutions to compete to get those athletes so that they are in a comfortable environment where they will emotionally have the resources and the people there who can serve their needs as opposed to serving the institutions first, because in the end, it's going to serve everyone.
Mhm.
So I think that's what's really been very important about what's going on now and the ability for institutions to take a good look at themselves and know that they want to do what's best for the student athlete, which would in turn will be best for the sport and the college. So I think it's a real awakening that's taking place, and it's going to be good for everyone. It's not going to damage anyone. It's going to be incentives for schools to do more, to keep their athletes there, find ways that they can monetize their abilities to keep them on campus, so they won't want to go pro too early or whenever they decide, or switch colleges because they're not happy. So we're building one big happy family right now, hopefully that they want to stay.
That's awesome. I mean, and the one other thing that one person did mention and they wanted to bring up, because we say all, like it's an effect for all. Also for like those athletes of transgender, because now it's starting to be a slight increase, not a major increase, but it's starting to grow where you have transgender athletes, like say males that are transitioning to females, and they're competing against other females. And some parents are like, I don't think that's fair because you are of a different anatomy, or you're stronger and you're faster. And I think Lashawn and myself kind of mentioned it, like we played against, like you ran with men and females, like males and females when you were in college, like we were all together, we played. For me, I played against the guys, and that really helped me to be a stronger post player because I played against. And I'm not sure how, because I did say I would mention this during the thing, because I'm like, I'm all about, if you want to play the sport, play the sport. If you feel that male, female, whatever your gender is, that's all, whatever you identify, that's all. But if you want to compete, just compete. If you go on that track, you go on that court, you go on that field, and you give it your all, guess what? You give it your all. And if you're worried about coaches wondering, oh, can you compete? They're not, they're looking at you. They're looking at your ability. They're looking at your personality. They're looking at, are you going to be a good fit with my program? In a way, I want to say openly, which I'm hoping that she's listening, it really doesn't matter. And for me, it doesn't matter, because I want someone that's going to want to challenge me because I want to get better. And I don't care if you're male, female, black, white, Asian, whatever. I just want you to be a person that's going to challenge me. And I'm going to be like, all right, I want to beat you one day. That's just how I see it. Like, I want to catch up to you. Oh, you scored 20 on me. I want to score 22. And it will be nice and easy. So that's always my challenge. So when it comes to, as I mentioned, to the whole transgender, to me personally, it doesn't matter. As long as the ball's still orange, the hoop is still orange, let's go. Let's see what we got.
Yeah, if I'm honest, when this first came to light and it started to be any type of conversation, not even like a main topic of conversation, but just when it came up, I was very conflicted because it's like, well, genetically it's different. And, I had my thoughts about it. And so I tried to look at both sides of it. As time has gone on, I think about it and I say, well, what's the difference between someone who trains extra hard and competes to their capacity, and someone who doesn't. Like, the one who trains the most is going to win. The one who doesn't train as much as they should is not going to fare as well in their sport. So, if people are thinking about this from, a moral issue or a religious issue, hey, I'm not giving anybody their halo nor their wings in heaven. And I am not a person who is about to judge someone who chooses to transition. I am not going to judge someone who chooses the same way I'm not going to judge someone who chooses to train hard or not. It's the same plane. And if that person has a desire to compete and be loyal to their team and be a team player and support their teammates and honor their coach's commitment, those are the things I'm looking for as a coach. Those are the things I'm looking for as a team, as an athlete who is going to be on a team. Are you going to fulfill those things? Because if it becomes simply about the transgender title, then we're not talking about the sport anymore.
Exactly. All right, Miss Sheila, would you like to add on, or are you okay?
No, I was just thinking, because I'm a lot older than you all. So I'm thinking about, a few years ago, I was working at a school, and I was doing before and after care. And it was just the interesting dynamics just to see how parents who are really supporting kids 5, 6 years old who are coming in with capes on and wanting to sing.
So let's see if we can get back in there. So capes on and wanting to sing.
Board or not, it's there. And so it's important that we become comfortable with what other people's rights are and their feelings are, and not to try to influence them in one way or the other. And I think that they have the right to develop as a family. And if they're what things that they might do, you may not be, I guess, approve or disapprove, because it's not really your job to approve or disapprove what someone else does. So you're accepting what comes to you, and you want to try to help that young person meet their full potential. So when I was at the daycare and we had young boys who were singing, I forgot, it was a popular movie, but they were just singing in their hearts out as this little girl, but they were boys.
Right.
And so it was so you're just seeing it from a very early age. And that's something that people are just going to have to realize. It's not your choice, it's their choice. And that you have to accept that they are becoming who they want to be, not who you want them to be.
Right.
And so I found that to be a new dynamic that's going on in education, that education has to take hold of it, embrace it, and find ways so that everyone can learn and learn from each other.
That is a perfect closer, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to educate as many people as we can. We're trying to educate parents as well as those student athletes. So I will have to say this is going to have to be a closure, but this was amazing. I know an hour just went by so quickly. You just never knew. It just like flew by. But of course, we're all going to pass out after this. But anyway, thank you so much for just tuning in. I think Benjamin, he was here for a little bit, and a couple of people just kind of passed in and passed out. And I greatly appreciate you just stopping by, and hopefully you got something from this. And of course, there will be a replay. I'm going to try to put that on sometime tomorrow. But I definitely want to thank so much for Miss Sheila Weaver and then Lashawn Gee. I greatly appreciate you guys for coming in. And if anything, just kind of wrap up with like, how can people contact you if they really want to reach out to you? So
Sure.
Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me on, I'm migrating my way back into Instagram. I was on hiatus for a while. But this month being it's International Women's Month, I host a summit last year was my inaugural year. This year I'm back and we're having our second annual Women's Discipline and Mindset Summit. It's a virtual summit and it's held the last week in March. So on Instagram, I will be there, living there as the Elle Gee. So you can find me there at TheEllegee_. And my website is the same, thelg.com, where you can find information on discipline, mindset, focus, authenticity, transitioning, living in that living and learning how to transition yourself into your sport and life after sports.
Perfect. Thank you. And then Miss Sheila, how can we reach out?
You can reach me at shelovessports@gmail.com. That's one way. And my Instagram is Play Sports in College.
Perfect. And then of course, like
if you remember.
Right. And of course, if you guys can write all these things down, it will be, if you'll go to my YouTube channel, I will put this in the description for this video for the replay. So you can definitely go in there and get all the contact information, their Facebook, Instagram. I stalked them. So I just basically took everything. And again, my name is Audrey Codner Gibson. I'm basically the academic for athletes and also ACG math tutoring. If you have any kind of questions, if you need any kind of resources, get some ideas, I got a question about this, go ahead and reach out for me because I do have a couple videos out. My latest series is Becoming Otto. And Otto was my basketball nickname. So I just basically shared my story of how I became the basketball player, the professional player, and the two-time Hall of Famer for basketball as well. So definitely reach out to us, Facebook, Instagram, and also on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking this time, and we will see you for the next event. Take care. Hello, and thank you so much for watching. As always, if you ever want to contact me, just go ahead and go to my Solo2 account. I will also put the link in the description. And I know a lot of people always say, make sure you like and subscribe. But I'd rather you put a comment in. I want to hear from you. So put a comment in, go ahead and reach out, and I'll see you at the next video. Take care.